Oh wait, I think I should just blur that out not to get on the bad side of the algorithm. Self-unaliving squad, unalive the Justice League. No, that just sounds like shit. F it. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is finally out after around 2 years worth of delays, and it's not going well. Now, I will say that I went in fully expecting this game to be bad, and that's because, personally, I don't have a lot of faith in AAA games, especially when it comes to live services. I mean, seriously, this type of game is on the struggle bus. Marvel's Avengers.
Gutted.
Anthem.
Rotted.
In fact, there are lots of similarities between this game and Marvel's Avengers, not just by virtue of being part of the two mainstream superhero universes that are frequently compared, or even in the fact that they were both pretty negatively looked upon long before their release. And that is despite Suicide Squad being developed by Rocksteady. You know, the guys behind the fantastic Arkham series. But both games try somewhat similar things, so I will be drawing some comparisons going forward. Now, if you want to know whether this game is worth getting while avoiding spoilers, I'll say this. I am genuinely quite surprised by the fact that I did manage to get some fun out of it. I don't inherently agree with the idea that this game is a complete failure, and believe me, I am pretty damn critical when it comes to my enjoyment of a piece of media. So I will say that while this game is not pinnacle, there is entertainment to be enjoyed. Would I recommend this game? Kinda, yeah, but more in a wait for a significant sale kinda way. The gameplay is fun and satisfying, but gets stale. The characters are well done and for the most part entertaining. And the story is a mix of good and bad, though I did overall enjoy the direction they went in. Oh, and every single cosmetic thing is locked behind microtransactions. In a fully priced game. I mean, is there really any satisfaction to be gained from earning these things? So, that's your spoiler-free summary of the review. Now for those of you who don't mind spoilers, kick back and relax, grab yourself some water? I don't know. And do subscribe, because it gives me serotonin. And we could all use some of that these days. So, let's start this deep dive with a premise. I think most of us by now are familiar with the concept of the Suicide Squad, a group of villains being coerced into doing some good by Amanda Waller, a morally ambiguous character on the side of good but with a really screwed sense of ethics. This iteration of Task Force X has Harley Quinn, Deadshot, Captain Boomerang, and King Shark as playable members in a frantic open-world third-person looter-shooter with specific focus on free-running capabilities. Now this is all very interesting as Rocksteady had previously worked on the Arkham series, where the focus was on fluid and clean combat movement and stealth and subtlety. This is very much a departure from that style of gameplay. It's chaotic, fast-paced, and most of the time difficult to really see shit considering how much is going on. Let's dial back a bit to the beginning of the game and actually talk about something I really liked. Because the game has you play in an open world for the vast majority of your time, one thing Rocksteady wanted to do is nail the idea of verticality in combat and travel. So a lot of dedication is put into how each individual character interacts with terrain and traversal. If you've played Marvel's Avengers, you kinda get the idea. Different characters have different mechanics related to how you navigate your playspace, like some of them fly while others can't. The problem is that all of these characters belong to a certain type of traversal, so they end up not really feeling unique. They either fly, use grappling mechanics, or just double jump. Oh, the pain of being a Captain America main. And when it comes to combat, these traversal capabilities don't really interact with it. This is exactly the bit where Suicide Squad does things much better. Each member has a fully unique traversal method. Deadshot has a jetpack, Harley has a bat drone and a grapple, Boomerang uses the Speed Force, and King Shark, well, he just jumps really high and somehow swims midair. This establishes really early on a particular identity to their playstyle, and it's also neat how some of them use the gadget of their nemesis. Boomerang uses the Flash's Speed Force while Harley uses Batman's gear. But when it comes to combat, this is where everything really shines. King Shark can use his momentum to crash into enemies, Harley uses her acrobatic abilities to shoot while swinging, and Deadshot can stabilize himself in air with the jetpack to accurately shoot at his targets. This dedication to giving each character a particular identity to their traversal mechanic really pays off, as in my experience, switching between characters made each session feel somewhat fresh. What's also great is how the game encourages switching characters. For certain missions, one of the members will be hyped up because it's about something that relates to them. Say you're going after the Flash, Captain Boomerang will be excited, same with Harley when it comes to Batman. This is not just a cool way to convey character and encourage players to try other members, but also a way to get more XP. Now, since a lot of emphasis is put in how you traverse the map as these characters, let's also talk about that a little bit. Metropolis is pretty much what you'd expect. It draws inspiration from New York City, it has DC-related landmarks, but that's not what I want to highlight here. What I like about it is that the size of it is just right. It's kind of small, but in a good way. Oh no, I just realized I could have made a size joke. The thing about this obsession with big maps is that it often results in huge worlds with nothing interesting to do. Rocksteady even mentioned how they want to make Metropolis twice the size of Gotham from Arkham Knight. I don't think that's exactly what we got, and honestly it's a good thing. There's not much to do within Metropolis other than fighting some enemies and doing some side objectives, which is something you can do in whatever part of the map. So the relatively small scale of the map protects against that while also making traveling across it not too much of a hassle. Oh, and also, a big plus of the map being small is that there's not a lot of places to put collectibles in, which this game has. Because of course it does. Another thing I liked is that the game doesn't waste a lot of time to introduce new things to you early on. You don't have to wait to get to a particular character level, which is great because character levels are not shared. The only real exceptions would be the Suicide Strike and the Speed Force Squad ultimate abilities, but other stuff is introduced organically as you progress through the story or at really early levels. You start out with 2 weapons, get grenades, afflictions, combo meter, traversal ultimates, basically a lot of options that freshen the game at first and become assets to use and combine later however you wish. Most of this stuff makes combat feel really chaotic, but the game encourages you to dial it back and pay attention to what's going on. Some enemies will be shielded and immune to gunfire and you have to break their armor via melee attacks. Then there's also enemies that have attacks that can be countered. And you do have to pay attention to this sort of stuff for the sake of maintaining your combo meter, because especially later on, a high combo meter enables you to deal more damage via passives unlocked through levels. So the game establishes a very interesting balance between frantic gameplay and the need to pay attention to increase and avoid losing your combo meter. All of these mechanics combined delivered an experience that, to me, was actually quite enjoyable. It's rewarding to be able to manage the chaotic aspect of the game with the things that need your attention to detail. I had so much fun with it in fact that I didn't even notice how repetitive missions get until much later on, and I think this is a testament to how much fun can be had via this game's combat. But at the end of the day, I did have to take off my rose-tinted glasses and acknowledge that the game's mission structure is quite repetitive. Here's the thing with live service multiplayer games. When you're making single-player stuff, it's much easier to create unique gameplay experiences. These things are made to work within a story that has a beginning and an ending, where replaying them is often optional to you wanting to replay the game. Live service games don't have that luxury because ideally you just keep replaying the same stuff as their story wouldn't have an end. In fact, most live services don't have a story that ends, they're just shut down. But this constraint means that you have to create experiences that can and must be replayed infinitely, because the game is meant to be played infinitely. And doing that without your formula becoming stale is extremely difficult, because it has to be infinitely enjoyable. There's no game in my mind that really manages to do that. Even when it comes to a game like Warframe, which I've genuinely enjoyed for years, I still think that it has that sort of problem. There's only so many times you can do something in a slightly different setting before you're sick of it. In Suicide Squad, if you haven't been as distracted as I was by the gameplay being fun, I can very much see how its repetitiveness might be a massive turnoff, especially when you get to the incredibly stale endgame. If you were to tell me that you've quit long before that, I'd honestly understand, because while Rocksteady has been great at crafting single-player experiences, they clearly lack the perspective needed when it comes to live services. Hell, I'm actually starting to think no one really has it, and you can let me know down in the comments if I've been looking in the wrong places. But live services have this tendency to become stale and incestuous with their mechanics, building more and more on top of them to the point where it becomes frustratingly hard to keep track of everything and have to min-max stuff till something new happens and then you have to do it all over again. It's no surprise to me that with this concept they have a hard time eventually bringing players back or encouraging new ones to give it a shot. Games like Suicide Squad have really only their release to establish themselves with a strong player base, and given its mixed reaction, I don't think it's going well. In many ways, I think this game would have done better if it was released with its first season, not necessarily because it will add the Joker as a playable character. I mean, they released a teaser for him and it doesn't look like it's gonna go well.
At least buy me dinner first.
But the game simply needs more mission variety to it, and it's absolutely essential to make that variety visible as early as possible. In fact, I'm surprised how this game was delayed for around 2 years and got released with such a stale structure. Another thing I found surprising, to a shocking degree really, is the incredibly bad status of the game's multiplayer functionality. I played solo for the entire story because I didn't want to be interrupted by other players doing different things or progress missions not being available to me because other players haven't unlocked it yet. But after I finished it, I decided to give it a try and liked the direction Rocksteady went with it. It's essentially a competitive co-op situation where each player can focus on getting the highest individual score. If you win, you become the leader of the squad and get to decide what you do next, while teammates can offer suggestions. It's a cool twist where characters have various lines about how well someone is performing, and enemies do that too in a stylized effort to try and rile up the other members of the squad. So far so good. My problem with it though is not on a conceptual level, but more so on a technical one. When you decide to go online, the game connects you to a dedicated server, which would be great because you avoid the issue of poor connectivity that a peer-to-peer connection would have. Now, I'm saying specifically that it would be great because Jesus Christ and Associates, it's awful. For some reason, at the time I was playing, they were incredibly unstable. Damage not being registered, random disconnections, abilities being reset because the game doesn't understand I've used them. It was so awful that Rocksteady had to shut the multiplayer down for those who purchased the deluxe edition and could play earlier, because somehow a major bug would autocomplete the story for them. What are we doing in current year 2024 with big budget releases somehow getting multiplayer features so damn wrong? Now, let's switch up the subject a bit and talk about where I think a lot of the effort went in, the story. And let me start with the thing I enjoyed the most. You see this thing here in the title, the bit about killing the Justice League? Well, that's exactly what you get to do. One by one, you find ways to counteract their abilities, and you, on a personal level, have to come to the realization that your favorite heroes must die. I was afraid that at some point they would pull some bullshit about the heroes having such strong willpower that they're able to snap out of Brainiac's mind control, but it never happens, and I find this commitment absolutely refreshing. It also works fantastically in regards to narrative tension because you're playing as the underdogs in a mission that feels, well, suicidal. I mean, you have to fight essentially gods while playing as three dysfunctional people and a shark that learns for the first time what sarcasm is. I guess you could call it Sharkasm? Okay, alright. Let's go back to Marvel's Avengers a bit. One of the issues that I've had with it is that it just takes the concept of the Avengers from its comics. It doesn't set them up, it just puts them in a world and expects you to care. This is why I couldn't resonate with them, because yes, they look like the Avengers, but I didn't know them. It's sort of like watching the MCU by starting with Infinity War. You have no idea who these characters are or what they went through. In fact, I think it's actually why there was a backlash over these Avengers not looking like their cinematic universe counterparts. It's because when you just take the idea of these characters, you need a perspective, a reference point to connect with them. Marvel's Avengers thoroughly missed that and could not set up compelling personalities to them, which made sentimental moments fall flat. In comparison, Suicide Squad is somewhat different, but also confusing. It's heavily hinted it happens within the Arkhamverse. The Arkham Asylum outbreak happened, the city was turned into a prison, Joker died due to the Titan Serum, and Poison Ivy sacrificed herself to stop Scarecrow. That's all well and good, but what makes it confusing is that it's not explained how Batman is still alive or how Deadshot seems to be a different character altogether. Just as well, most other characters are done the same way Marvel's Avengers did it, and it's not great. I'm supposed to marvel at how cruel these controlled heroes can be, even though I wouldn't really know anything about their personality otherwise, though I'm sure that just like Marvel's Avengers, they would default to being one-dimensional quote-unquote good characters. What Suicide Squad does well is actually the characterization of the Task Force X members. The idea of choosing villains as a perspective to tell the story through is smart because their personalities could not just default to being good. They are bad, sure, but they have nuances. Harley is charismatically insane, Deadshot has his situation with his daughter and is the most serious member, Boomerang is... well, I'm not sure, he just seems to be insane, and King Shark looks like a brute, but he's really silly.
She is not made of meat. Is this what you call a vegetarian option?
Rocksteady was able to capitalize on these traits and integrate them in so many interactions they have. I think my favorite thing is this bit here where they activate a stasis trap and ask Harley to rescue them, but she just gropes Deadshot.
No! Harley, no!
Worth it!
Even Lex is like, bruh, this was supposed to catch one of you at most. Then there's this bit where they get golden kryptonite, and rather than get new armor infused with it, they tie and gaffer it around their armor. It's a touch that is stupid in a manner that is typical of the Suicide Squad and its members, and it's numerous interactions like these that made me enjoy the story. Amanda Waller's character is just as well really well done. She's absolutely ruthless, has no moral compass, and considers no price too high to achieve what she wants. There's even a moment where she discusses the possibility of using Brainiac's mind mind-controlled tech to control the squad, and these sorts of moments build tension between herself and the team. Then there are some really sentimental moments, like when Wonder Woman uses the lasso of truth on the Flash and he tells her that they have to die, and subsequently the scenes where they do indeed die. Now these moments are obviously not meant to be sad for the villains, they celebrate it. It's about you yourself having to cope with the fact that you directly had killed them. In a way, these moments are meant to be sad for you. Or later, when she herself is defeated by Superman. She may not necessarily have a deep personality, but she started representing something for the team, and her passing is a somber and silent moment. It interacts beautifully with the underdog motif, since what chance do they have to defeat Superman themselves? These are the things that made me enjoy the story. It's undeniably full of character and tension, and honestly far surpasses Marvel's Avengers. That being said, there are some issues here that really detract from the experience. Despite the underdog motif being quite strong, the game doesn't always manage to maintain the tension it implies because the squad happens to have some really strong plot armor. The first time you arrive in Metropolis, you're captured by Green Lantern, open brackets evil, and for some reason he just floats around with you and wastes time on exposition, which I don't understand the idea of at all. Why do all of this when you could either A, just eliminate them on the spot, or B, bring them to Brainiac's ship and convert them? Am I really supposed to think that evil John Stewart here somehow believes he has to convince them? Thank God the Flash appears and puts a stop to that stupid nonsense. A few minutes later, you find yourself in a building after rescuing the Flash, where you encounter Batman. He's clearly open brackets evil and just kills random civilians, but in this next section the squad is spread out and you play short sequences with each member being hunted down, and he just kinda knocks them out and lets them go? Like, I get that his objective is to just get the Flash, but you're telling me that this merciless brainwashed Batman wouldn't get rid of them? This is not very open brackets evil of him. Frankly, pretty much every evil Justice League member has an opportunity to kill them at one point or another, but they never go through with it. It's a very nonsensical lapse in logic, and it really takes away from the beautifully crafted tension the story has going for it. Now, since we've talked about Batman, I feel like there's something else we should talk about. You might have seen on the internet talk about Suicide Squad being disrespectful to the Batman legacy. IGN in particular loves this shit for some reason. They even tried to sort of like spread misinformation about the game's price being reduced, even though this is just from an eBay discount that is site-wide. Like, girl, IGN, what the fuck are you doing? For some context, voice actor Kevin Conroy has voiced Batman in a wide variety of DC media for decades. He was a veritable legend within the industry and tragically passed away in 2022 at 66 years of age. The reason Suicide Squad gets a lot of flack related to his passing is because this is believed to be his last performance as the Batman, and popular opinion is that this iteration of the Batman character is weak to the point of being disrespectful to Kevin Conroy's legacy. In a way, I do kind of understand that. There are weird things Batman does here, like the aforementioned time he just lets the squad escape, or stuff like his communication being hacked by Waller's group and him not being able to hack back, or losing to the squad while they're under the effects of fear toxin because Hardy was able to sort of create a counter to it out of nowhere. I didn't really get that part. Personally, one of the cool things I found about his character is how he's so cautious he even has contingency plans against fellow Justice League members. And that idea does make an appearance here, although it's kinda poorly done. Like, he says there's no anti-Batman device, but it's not about having a device. He's human, he just hides in the shadows. Grab a fucking flashlight. Or how he had these contingency plans that the squad actually used, but at no point tries to warn his fellow evil Justice League members about them. You get the idea, there's a lot of really stupid things Batman does as a character here, and that's a fair critique. However, to go on these tangents about how this is a disrespect to Kevin Conroy's legacy is a bit much. One bad portrayal does not all of a sudden destroy decades of work he's put into bringing the Batman to life as a character. Just as well, the desire for him to have a more fanservice-y role, like him replacing Wonder Woman as the last uncorrupted Justice League member, is just a very weird request. That's not the story Rocksteady wanted to go with. What Rocksteady created is not just the story where the villains kill the heroes, it's really about you on a personal level actually pulling the trigger. It's about you confronting the realization that you don't want to kill them, but you really have to, and that's why Batman's character here is used perfectly. It's about stepping away from being a hero and doing some actually really tough decisions. What I'm trying to say is that the story is meant to hurt by design. And this is without mentioning how you can't really change Batman's entire role posthumously after the voice actor's passing. Things don't work this way, and while I understand the ache that comes with Kevin Conroy's passing, putting this much undue burden on one studio because of the story they wanted to make is quite unfair. I'm pretty sure Rocksteady did not intend to disrespect the memory of a colleague. Batman's Arkham story ended 9 years ago. This game is not about returning to it, and people need to accept this and move on. At least until Warner Bros. Decided wants more money and revives it, cause apparently a soulless cash grab is supposed to be better. Anyway, the part of the story that I think is really weak is the bit at the end, which involves Brainiac. So, for the most part of the story, he just ignores you until most of the Justice League is already eliminated, and then he shows that he could have, at any time, put the team in stasis and teleport them to him for conversion. Like, this guy who bested most of the Justice League all of a sudden becomes a joke. It takes so much away from how imposing his character is supposed to be. This guy is a conqueror of Earth in so many parallel universes, and yet Task Force X beats him not because they're prepared or anything like that, but simply by virtue of being ignored. And when it comes to fighting him as the final boss of the game, it's just a repeat of Flash's boss fight intermitted by waves of enemies. It's honestly kind of annoying how he sticks around for like 30 seconds and then goes away and summons loads of enemies and does it over and over again until he stops. It really is the sort of thing we call in the business as fucking lame. The only positive thing I have to say is that it's nice how Poison Ivy and Gizmo try to support the team. It feels like your allies coming together and rewarding you for doing their missions, but in the end, it is fairly anticlimactic. And when it comes to having an ending for the story, you bring Brainiac back and then it's revealed that there are 12 other Brainiacs, and the story kind of just ends there, and the idea of a live service takes over. From here, you just do the same missions on an alternate Earth with increasing difficulty and rewards, and you can even fight Brainiac again as the Flash if you want to, so there's no real content here, just recycled stuff. I will say though that the rewards and the idea behind these endgame items is pretty neat. They're themed around other villains and have bonuses that activate when you equip stuff from the same set. I'm guessing this is going to be a big part of the seasonal rewards going forward, and honestly, I like it. I really appreciate games that take a risk in providing stuff that kind of break the balance of the game and make you feel really powerful, which these items do. In fact, this is why I've enjoyed some of the late game of Diablo 3 years ago, because this is the sort of stuff it does with its sets, and seeing it in Suicide Squad is something I think is cool. And that's all I have to say about Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League. Oh wait, I forgot about this flag. Oh man, this is gonna get some ex-Twitter users riled up. Anyway, at the end of the day, this game is what you'd expect from a big budget live service. It falls in the general problem of really not doing anything spectacular and ultimately falling short because of its stale content. That being said, I have enjoyed it much more than Marvel's Avengers. Its story and character work are quite okay, and the base combat idea is engaging and fun. This, in my opinion, makes Suicide Squad a mediocre experience. Not inherently bad, and okay enough for me to check in once in a while and see what the game does in the future. So, this brings us to the outro. Thanks for watching. I hope that despite the mixed and controversial reaction to the game, you do understand where my opinions come from, and I look forward to reading yours. Like and subscribe if you had a good time watching, have a good one, and see you next time.